So I'm going to do a few more things with you guys. I'm going to do the August 2024 free response section in your green review books. So if you go to page 40 in your green review books, this is the August 2024. I'm going to do the free response with you guys on that. So start with the 2 pointers. Real quick, they just want us to graph this. I would get a table in your graphing calculator and plot the points. All right. I'm going to go to my y equals. Okay. I'm going to do 3.2, 1.8 raised to the x. Okay. And then go to the table. And look, my table here goes from -10 to 10. I'm going to double check that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah. So I'm going to get as many points off here that I could plot as possible. And then do that. Okay. Let's see here. So these look like teeny weeny decimals. Okay. So let's see here. Let me put my table here. All right. And I mean, you're there for 3 hours. Copy down a bunch of those decimals. -10.009. -9.0161. -8. So I'm going to go and write down as many points as I can. The more points you plot, the better your graph's going to be. You're going to be there for 3 hours. You make me some good looking graphs. So these are some tiny decimals. I might not plot them all, but I'm at school, so the lights keep flickering if I don't move enough.
At this time, all students and proctors should be in exam rooms. Proctors, after reading directions, you may begin.
So all I'm doing is copying down the table. And I probably can't get much past that. So I'm going to plot as many points now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm going to scale it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I know what I'm doing. I recommend you guys do that on the Regents. Okay? And we're going to plot some points. Some easy ones first. Like 0 is 3.2. 1, 2, 3. So a little bit above the 3. 1 is a little bit above the 5. Right? 2 is a little bit above the 10, okay? And then I'll start doing the negatives. -1 is 1 point, so right about there. So I'm ballparking it. -2 is right below the 1. -3 is about 0.5. All right, if you notice, the decimals are getting smaller and smaller. Now, it didn't give me an interval, so that means I'm going to connect the dots and put arrows on it. And ta-da! 2 points. Point for the table, point for plotting, and then make sure you have arrows on it. And again, it has arrows because it didn't give me an interval. All right, next one. All right. Is x plus 3 a factor? Okay, again, 2 different ways of doing this one. First one is to do synthetic division. That's right. And put -3 in the box. Copy down my coefficients, 7. And again, double checking I'm not missing anything. 3, 2, 1, 0. Draw a line. First number comes down. What? Multiply. Add down. Multiply. Add down. Multiply. Add down. I identify that that is the remainder. And then all you have to write a wrap-up sentence. Since there's no remainder, x plus 3 is a factor. Okay, so again, there are 2 methods of doing that. Synthetic division, I'm going to put or, you would take the number in the box and you can plug that in. So you show the plug in. Oops, I'm running out of room here. When you plug it in, you also get 0. And that would be the remainder, and you would have the same sentence. So you get to pick which way you want to do it. I know a lot of you like the synthetic. So, okay. All right, for this one, we're going to factor it. Again, we should be superheroes at this point. I'm going to recopy it over here. Okay. Now, the number one rule in factoring is GCF. And this, in fact, does have a GCF, which is an X, right? So you're going to pull that out first. Okay. Then we're going to do what you guys are really good at, which is grouping. So that gives me x minus 5. Bring down your plus sign. 3, x minus 5. So we've got an x minus 5, a 2x squared plus 3, but please don't forget to bring him down. And he can't be broken up any smaller. So that question's done. Okay? All right. 28. The monthly unemployment rate of towns in the United States is normally distributed. And we know we love this. This is where you draw them out. That counts as your work. Okay? The mean, 5.2%, right? And the standard deviation is 1.6. I'm going to write that down. Determine the percentage of towns to the nearest integer that have a monthly unemployment rate greater than 6. So 6% would be here. We need above that. Okay. So I go to my calculator. All right? This is where we do second vars. All right? Let me do that again. Let me clear all this up. Second vars. We always go to number 2. Now the lower number, look at the shaded region, is 6. But we're going up forever, so I put a really big number like 1,000 in, or 10,000. The first one is the mean, which was 5.2. And the second number is standard deviation, which is 1.6. This is just going to reiterate the numbers I typed in. And I'm going to write down what that decimals. Now, this is 0.3085375,322. Okay. Now, did this question ask for a percent, right? Determine the percentage of towns. So that means I have to turn this as a decimal into a percent, right? To the nearest integer, so whole number. So I'm going to move the decimal point twice. And that would be 31%. Okay. Next one. Number 29. The function d of t models the water depth in feet at a location in a bay, t hours since last high tide. Determine the minimum water depth in feet. All right, so I'm going to recopy this equation down. All right, so very important to know is this last number is the midline. That's the middle of the graph, okay? The first number is the amplitude. That tells me how high or how low. And that number there is the frequency. Okay, you use the frequency to do the period. Now, they did not say the word period anywhere in there. That's my B. Okay, so the period formula is 2 pi over b. If they asked for the period, you would just take that number and plug it in. But they didn't in this one. They wanted to know what the minimum depth would be. So that's pretty easy because you take the middle number, which is 5, and this guy tells you how high and how low to go. So the max depth would be the midline plus the amplitude, and the minimum depth would be the midline minus the amplitude. So that is the answer to the question. Okay. Next one. Okay. A brewed cup of coffee contains 130 milligrams of caffeine. The half-life of it is 5.5. Write a function C of t. So the very first thing I do is write down C of t equals. Then you always start with the original amount. What's the original amount? 130. If they say half-life, doubling, tripling, that number just goes in there. Okay? And then you always take your time and then divide it by whatever they gave you. And that is it. And you can get a point even if you leave this off. So at least if you do something, you're going to get a point for that. All right, next one. What does this guy say? Marcus is a long-distance walker. In one race, he walked 55 miles in T hours. In another race, he walked 65 in T plus 3. His rates are shown. Marcus walked an equivalent rate R for each race. Determine the number of hours it took so we want to set them equal to each other, basically. He walked an equivalent amount, right? So we're going to do 55 over T. Want to know when that's going to equal this guy. Okay? Now, what do we do when we have a fraction equal to a fraction? We're going to cross multiply. So I do 55 times this guy. So it's 55t plus, we're going to do 55 times 3, 165. And then go this way equals 65t. So all we have to do now is subtract over the 55t and get 10t, divide by 10, and you get 16.5. So please keep in mind that some of the 2-pointers are very straightforward. They're not meant to trick you, okay? Let's look at our last 2-pointer here. Solve this equation algebraically. Express your answer in a plus bi form. Again, I've mentioned this before. This means the quadratic formula. So please go to your formula sheets. It's on there. X equals negative b plus minus. You just copy down the formula off the formula sheet. And then we're going to do A, B, and C here. A would be 1, B would be 3, C is 11. Your A, B, and C's never have X's in them. So we're going to do X equals negative 3 plus minus 3 squared minus 4 times 1 times 11 all over 2 times 1. So that makes negative 3 plus minus 2 on the bottom, okay? Then I go to my calculator. Do not put the radical in the calculator, just the stuff under it. So 3 squared minus 4 times, 4, 1. And notice it looks exactly the same as what I wrote on my paper. So I get negative 35. Now, the second there's a negative under the radical, that means you're going to pop your eye out. Now, the next thing I say to myself is, can I break up radical 35? Nope. So all I have to do in one last step is separate this and then reduce these fractions if I can, but I can't. So that's the answer to that question. Okay, next one. Now we're doing our 4-pointers. The population of China in millions can be modeled by this function, where X is the number of years since 1990. The population of India since 1990 is summarized in this table. All right. Which country's population had a greater average rate of change between 1990 and 2000? All right. Average rate of change. Slope. So it's y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. So we want to compare China and India. So let's do China first. Okay. China's population was given with this equation, okay? And we want to do between, all right, and this is, look, years since 1950. So 1900. So 1950 would be 50 years later. And then 2020, so we're going to do 2020 minus 1900. It's 120. So those are going to be my two x's. Okay? So what I'm going to do is put this in my table. I'm going to go to y equals. E is over here, right? So here's the E next to the 4. 0.0133x. So I'm going to double check I typed it in right. 316.93. The E again is over here, right there in blue. 0.01. And I'm going to go to the table. And I need to get 50 and 120. So I'm just going to scroll down here. So 616.27. And I'm going to keep scrolling down. Get 120. One 563.5. All right, so now I get those off the table, and now I'm going to do y2 minus y1, so 156, right, minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. Okay, so quit that. Alpha y equals 1563.5 minus 616.27 over 120 minus 50. Okay, and I'm getting 13.531. I'm going to write the whole thing down. Okay, and now I'm going to do India. Now India is a lot easier because they gave us a table. So we still want to use the same 2 points. So we're still going to use 50 and 120. So 50 is right there, 3.3, and 120 is right there, 1380. So then I'm going to do y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1, right? I'll put that in my calculator. $14.33857,143. So which country had the greater? India was greater. And that's the answer to the question. Definitely going to be an average rate of change question. I've been telling you guys that, right? All right. Definitely going to be one of these. We've done thousands of these, right? I don't even read the question. I go directly to there, right? And I'm going to do 42.029 plus 2 of the standard deviations. 42.209 minus 2. So I do that first. 42 point, whoop, that's not a point, 0.029. And then I write everything down. All right. Based on determine the to the nearest hundredth, so 2 decimal point places. So you write down the smaller one first, 35.82. 2, then the bigger one, 48.24. Okay, so I promise you'll get this. Please get at least the first part right. Okay, is the time 49.8 seconds unusual? Use statistical evidence to justify it. So look at that number. Anything that falls in here is a usual or normal answer. 49.8 is not in that interval. So, since 49.8 isn't within the interval, it is unusual. And that's all you get. So you get a point for saying it's not in the interval and that it's unusual. Okay, 35. Consider the function f of x minus 2 to the x. Is f of x an even function? Justify your answer. So there are two ways of doing this, okay? So, even function. If they ask for even or odd, you're gonna plug in, basically, negative x, all right? So, consider the function f of x minus 2 to the x. Is f of x an even function? Justify your answer. But did they give us a function? Or the function results after x is shifted up 5. I think that's supposed to be an equal sign. Like that. That's a typo. All right. Is that an even function? So what we're going to do, I'm actually going to double check that because I do think that's a typo in our booklets. Let me just check because I have the original sitting here. What number is this? 35? Yes, that is a typo. So that's supposed to be an equal sign, not a minus sign. We want to determine if it's an even function. So anytime, there's two ways of doing it. One way is to plug in negative x. So you do 2 to the negative x. Okay? Now, a negative exponent means that gets flipped upside down. And you end up with that. Okay? The deal is, this needs to look the same as the original, right? The equation, and it doesn't. So it's not even. Since 2 to the negative x does not equal 2 to the x. All right? Now there's a way I think you guys are going to like better. Okay? If you go to y equals, and we're going to type in 2 raised to the x, and hit zoom 6. We're going to get a nice clean graph here. Okay. The easier way, instead of doing that, if they say algebraically, you have to do it that way, but the easiest way is graphically. If something is even, it has symmetry over the y-axis, meaning if I fold it on the y-axis, it matches up perfectly. That does not. So what I think you guys might like better for this, you could say no. There is no symmetry over the y-axis. Okay, that's the easiest way to do it. Let me show you what an even function would look like. If you typed in x squared and looked at the graph, that's an even function because if you folded it, it matches up on both sides. Okay, an odd function has symmetry over the origin. That's the difference. Odd is origin, and even is symmetry over the y-axis. All right, next part. Write an equation for g of x. So I'm going to write down g of x equals, such that take f of x, all right, and you want to shift it up 5 units. Well, that just means, guys, you want to add a 5 onto the end, like that. Okay. If it said down 5 units, you would subtract 5 off the end. Okay. Next one. Write an equation for h of x, the inverse of this. All right. So we want to make the inverse of this guy. So the first step in finding an inverse is to switch the x and the y. So I'm going to do that. Then we have to get the y alone again. So to do that, I'm going to subtract over the 5. Okay? And then we have to log it. Okay? So what I mean by that, we had one of these on the last test. You're going to write a log in front of both sides. Okay? And then by logging it, that exponent is going to fall down in front. Okay? And to get the y alone again, I'm just going to divide log x minus 5 divided by log 2. And the last thing I'm going to do is they want us to use h of x. So to find an inverse, you switch the x and the y, and you get the y alone again. All right, 2 more questions, and that's it, right? Solve the system of equations below algebraically. All right, so this is where you get the easier question, which would be the bottom guy. And let's get the y alone. So I'm going to subtract over the x, like that. But the y isn't alone yet, so I'm going to divide everything by a negative. So I'm going to switch all the signs. So now the y is alone. So now I'm going to come back here, and where I see the y, I'm going to plug that in. So I'll come back up here. So I'm going to do x minus 4 squared. Okay, so I'm going to clean that up, which should make x minus 7 squared. Okay, and now those squares mean write the parenthesis twice. And then I'm going to distribute. Okay, and this makes x squared minus 8x. Okay, so now I'm going to combine like terms. So I've got 2x squares. That makes minus 22x. So 16 plus 49 is 65 is equal to the 9. So I'm going to subtract the 9 over now. And I get 56. Now, I don't know if you guys noticed, right? These are really big numbers. There's a GCF here. So I'm going to pull out a 2. So when I pull out a 2, I end up with that. Okay? And that's going to factor into x minus 7, x minus 4 equals 0. Now, the 2, he's a number. We don't care about him. It's these x's we care about. So now we've got x equals 7, x equals 4. All we have to do now is plug into my y equals to get the y's. So y is equal to 7 minus 6, which is 1. So that makes the point now 7, 1. That's one of the answers. And plug 4 in. So the other answer is 4, negative 2. And there you go. All right, one more question in this test. We're on page 46 now. Okay, let's see what this question is asking. Okay. Taylor wants to open an investment account with $1,200 she received for her birthday. She has borrowed her choices down, narrowed her choices down to 2 banks. America's Bank offered 6 points compounded quarterly, and Barnyard Bank offers 6.3 compounded continuously. Write A and B. So we have to come up with these equations. So A of t equals. So you always start with the original amount, 1,200. Okay. Then it's 1. Now, if they give you a percent, you're going to do 1 plus that percent, but you got to change it into a decimal. So you got to move the decimal point 2 places. So it's 0.064. Quarterly means you're going to divide by 4, and whatever number goes there goes right next to it, next to the T. All right. Barnyard Bank, $1,200. Now, this one's special. It says continuously, so we're using PERT. So that means you're going to put an E and then move your decimal point place to 0.0635, like that. Okay. So those are your two equations. Taylor would like to invest $1,200 into one bank for 10 years with making no additional withdrawals. Okay. With which bank should she make the most money? We're just going to plug 10 now into both these equations. All right? Yeah, 10 years. So we're going to plug 10 in every time we see a T. Okay, so I'm going to type this in my calculator. And I'm getting, it's money, so I'm going to use it like a cash register here. 28 cents. Okay, and then I'm going to plug 10 into the other guy, 1200E. And we're going to plug in 10 for 10 years, right? So 1200, remember the E is over by the 4, so I'm going to hit second, right? 0.0635, plug in 10 years. Okay, which banks earn more money? So Bank B, Barnyard Bank. Barnyard Bank makes more. Not much more, just a tiny bit more, okay? Taylor chooses to invest her money in Barnyard Bank. Algebraically determine how long it will take her for her investments to triple. All right, so we have to take 1,200 times 3. That's 3,600. So I'm going to do 3,600 equals 1,200 E to the 0.0635 T. Okay. So algebraically means we have to do this with math. So the first thing I'm going to do is divide by the 1,200 and see if it goes in evenly. If it does, it should. It's going to be 3. All right. Now, we've done a couple of these now where if the x is in the exponent, we're going to log it. But E gets his own log. He gets the natural log. Okay. And then that falls down in front. Okay. Now, that is always the number 1, so we don't need to use it anymore. So now I've got the natural log of 3 is equal to 0.0635 T. If you forget that, right, you can still divide that over. Watch what happens. The natural log of 3 divided by the natural log of, you would just do e to the first power. And it'll all work out, okay? But here, it's just easier if you remember that's a 1. So T equals, so now I'm going to do the natural log of 3 divided by 0.0635. It is 17.3. Now, if you forget how to do that algebraically, guys, you can go to y equals and put that in and find the intersection point. And you go from there. But that is it for this review.